The length of the user ID is about the past, right? So it's my job to talk about the future. So I hope you guys are excited. This is what you guys have been waiting for. Evolving DXP to empower you. So today I'm going to be talking about evolving DXP. And to jump in, I want to talk about why we need to evolve, why Liferay DXP needs to evolve. Brian Chan in yesterday's talk touched on it, but we peaked at adoption on 6.2. And he had his theories of why that happened. He mentioned OSGI, he mentioned our clustering debacle. I have my own opinions, and I think part of the reason why, or a large part of the reason why the adoption peaked at 6.2 is because the market changed. And I want to talk a little bit about that before I get into the features. So, product design. I want to start with product design, and specifically, I guess, product design is hard because I want to talk a little bit about what Liferay DXP was in the past. So Liferay has always been good at building things, and we built things fairly quickly. We were always the quick followers. Our competitors would release a functionality, we would follow suit, and we would put it into the market at a more affordable price. And that worked for us for a while. But we've always shied away from product design because at the time we were good at architecting code, but maybe not necessarily the actual product. And when I'm talking about product design, I'm not just talking about the interface. Of course, there's parts of it that involve the interface, but I'm talking about solution architecting, really making sure that the pieces fit together. And so why is product design important? What does that have to do with loss in market share? Well, I think that expectations changed. So right around maybe a decade ago, with software in general, some of the expectations were evolving. Product design was becoming way better, even in the enterprise software world. And we didn't really keep up. And we did okay for a while, but some of the problems of not having it started to show up. Namely, bad upgrades. So because we didn't really design things with upgrades in mind, as we started to change things, it became a problem. We were extensible, we allowed you to customize anything, but we couldn't support the customizations while adding new features. Unclear business value. In order to be able to really provide business value, or provide value even in a product, you have to think a lot about how the user is going to use the product, what the use case is. And we've always shied away from that. And so what we often did was we just built a bunch of features. We built the tools for you guys. We relied on you guys to help us to deliver that last 5 miles in building that solution. But as more and more business users started to become part of that purchasing decision, they would look at Liferay, and the business value would be unclear. They look at it and go, what am I supposed to do with this? How do I build a page? How do I show a list of content? It wasn't easy. And then finally, there was a lack of cohesion. So as we added functionality, there was a lot of things that didn't quite work the way you would think it would work. And again, it was an issue of we built features one after another, but we weren't really planning ahead. And so the reason why I bring these things up is because before I talk about how we're evolving DXP, I wanted to share a little bit about how we're evolving as a product organization. We're starting to really care about the product design. We spend a lot of time and effort in a room talking about, well, if we support this use case that way, how are we going to support this other use case this way? We're trying to keep track of all the 5,000 different use cases out there, the different nuances, the different ways that customers are customizing the product extending the product, how they want the product to evolve, and trying to take all those pieces and really push them together and evolve them to build something better. And hopefully you're starting to see that in our product right now. And the hope is that we continue to deliver on that and improve on that as we move forward. And through that, hopefully, we start becoming more appealing to different markets. So Brian Chan also talked about the 1%, how people in this room, we know that you guys more or less like Liferay. You guys like using the product. The product's reliable, the product's, you're used to it, you know how to do things with it, you know how to build solutions with it. But we need to broaden the audience. And by improving these things, we hope to broaden the audience. So let me jump into some of the ways that we're making that happen in Liferay DXP as we move forward. And just a caveat, as Olaf mentioned, this is the plan for the next 15 to 30 months. So 2 to 3 year roadmap. What we're not doing is promising things for the next release, although you will start seeing these things in the next release. What we're sharing right now is our vision for the future. So more out-of-the-box value. And when I say more out-of-the-box value, I'm talking about business value, more out-of-the-box functionality that's immediately obvious to use. And so this is about having a more opinionated approach on doing things, on being able to support content authors and marketers and administrators in their work without having to do extensive customization. And by having more out-of-the-box value, that also means that you guys, the implementers, the developers, the partners, have to rely less on customizations. You can just use the pieces that come in the box to construct the solutions. And hopefully that will lead to better upgrades. And so one way we're doing this is through better content authoring. One of the big focuses for us is content authoring. We looked across the board, and content authoring is by far the most prevalent horizontal capability in our product. Makes sense. We come from a portal background. People use this as a CMS as well. And so what we're trying to do with content authoring is we want to start having inline structured content. So already with Liferay 7.2 and 7.1, we've introduced inline editing. But one of the limitations with our inline editing was it wasn't structured behind the scenes. You could author content with the content pages, but it didn't play with the old world. What we're doing is we're combining those worlds while on top of that, delivering a better authoring experience. We also want to do fragment-based templating. So we introduced fragments again in 7.1, and you could put them on top of each other to build content pages, and they were static and they were one-off, but we want to evolve that to allow you to start creating templates with fragments. And so here you see a blog article, and that blog article has been constructed with templates. And once it's been constructed with templates, it's been associated to a web content structure. And now what the content author can do is they can go in and say, create new blog, and they immediately get the template. And they can now start authoring directly in that template. And along with this, we want to rework friendly URLs. We know that in the past, if you have to show content in asset publishers, the URL is kind of a mess. So we're going to invest in making sure the URLs are a lot better. Along the lines of the fragment-based templating, we also want to, and asset publishers, we want to more easily show lists. So I know everybody here loves the asset publisher. Some of you guys. And asset publisher is nice. It can be used for a lot of things. It's very flexible. You can use FreeMarker. It's powerful. You can get the service locator and do whatever the heck you want inside it. But it's not intuitive for non-technical users. So we're introducing a way to create lists through fragments. And I'll be touching more on the fragments ability, but you'll be able to drag and drop fragments. And here you can associate this list container to a content feed or a content set, something that we've introduced in 7.2. And then by doing so, by dragging and dropping fragments, you can start mapping them to the values of that content type. And then you can have lists, cards, tables, and so on and so forth. You only have to do this once. So the idea here is that with the content list, you will drag a heading, and it will automatically repeat for however many items you select here, in this case 3. And then you just have to map that heading to title, and you have a list. And you can save that template for later use. We also want to take templating and not just provide it for the lists, but we also want to take it to page layouts. Most pages have shared layouts. And historically, the only way to really ensure that the layout is consistent, the header and footer are consistent, was to do it through themes. Now you can do it through fragments. We're introducing this concept of master pages. You will be hopefully seeing that in 7.3. You'll be able to compose these templates with fragments, and they'll propagate. So it's a lot easier to maintain. You can construct them on the fly, and then you can build pages with it. And if next time you want to change the header, you just change the header in the component, and then propagate. So here you can see different types of templates. So you can have one where the header's on the top, footer's on the bottom. You can have a sidebar, what have you. The options are limitless. Another way that we're transforming how content authors and content publishers can work is through change sets, change lists. And this is something that we've been talking about since 7.2. And in 7.2, we showed a beta of this. And we got some feedback, and we realized it's not necessarily on target. So we completely reworked our approach to change lists. Instead, now we've really designed it ground up for content authors and collaboration, and really empowering content authors to work in the scope of projects. So now, instead of something like staging, which is fairly technical, we're coming at change lists from the angle of projects. So you'll be creating projects, working inside projects, making additions inside projects, reviewing content in projects, and then publishing projects. So it's project-based change management. It's designed for teams. So you can permission editorial access within a change list per team. So you can say that, hey, someone has permission to be able to modify in this project, not this project, and not on production. You can comment and collaborate. So when you actually view a change within this change list or this project, you'll actually be able to comment. And if there's a workflow associated with that content, you'll be able to move that content along the workflow, which means that as a content reviewer, you can now go to the central location, see the project that you're assigned to, and then just go down the list and review. And as a project manager, you can come into this and see why the project is bottlenecked. See who a certain piece of content is assigned to and ping them. Comment, send notifications. And finally, you'll be able to roll projects back. So the way it will work is that the projects will be published consecutively on top of each other, and you will be able to roll the previous project back. So you'll never be able to skip, per se. It's not like Git, but what you will be able to do is to roll back the changes one by one. So if you have something like a one-day sale, Black Friday sale, and you want to be able to roll back that change, you can do that. Another way we're trying to provide more out-of-the-box value is through DevOps as a service. So if you guys were here in the last talk, you heard Johnny talking a lot about this. I won't go into too much details, but what we're doing with DXP Cloud isn't just providing a hosting option, but we're providing DevOps as a service. We're providing all the capabilities from CI, continuous integration, your QA process, all of that, We're figuring out what are the best practices and offering that up all in one package. So you don't have to worry about that. We're also providing security and stability. The next section I want to talk about is design extensibility. So I was talking about out-of-the-box value. I've elaborated on how we want to be able to support use cases better out of the box, how we're trying to think through the commonalities in the different solutions you guys are creating, and trying to make sure our product capabilities out of the box can encompass that. But the reality is, you guys have very difficult problems to solve, and we're not going to be able to cover all of them. But what we do want to do is we want to do the due diligence of looking through all your use cases, thinking through where you might need to customize, and providing a better interface for that. In this way, we can offer a better contract to ensure that when you guys customize, we don't break your upgrades. We want to build a better contract between what we do and what you guys do on top. And we've already started to do that with OSGI and the modules and OSGI fragments, but we also want to extend that to front-end capabilities, and we want to extend that to database capabilities. So one of the ways that we're doing that with entities is we're introducing this concept of a data engine. You'll be able to create custom entities within the interface or through an API. These new records, it's a simple interface to build it, so even your administrators, even your non-technical users, your non-developers will be able to build this stuff. It's just drag and drop. So just like building a structure, you can build an entity. So if you have a use case where you need to now suddenly introduce partners into your system, you can do that. Another advantage of doing it this way is that it leverages all the platform capabilities. So you get all the APIs. We also want to provide a way to create custom views for that. So if you want to show that out as a table, you can build a custom table. You can drag and drop columns, which columns you want to show, and then publish those views. And those views can be used within your site editor, your various experiences, or even administrative controls. And again, the APIs that come with these custom entities, they leverage all the Liferay services. So anything that Service Builder utilizes, this will utilize too. So permissions will work with these custom entities. Things like the new change tracking could possibly work with them if you enable it. Another way we're supporting designed extensibility is through React plus fragments. So we introduced fragments again, and when we introduced fragments, we always had the idea of building composable components, because in the market we were seeing that these front-end developers are moving away from very monolithic UIs or building UIs for just a single page. They were starting to think about it as more of composable components. Things like React are coming out, things like Vue are coming out, Angular, web components, and so on and so forth. But we saw a disconnect between that paradigm and the CMS world. And so even today, you can start seeing things like headless being very popular. But the problem with headless is, by its nature, it really goes against all the things that CMSs have evolved in the last decade. If you go full headless, you lose or your business users lose complete control of the interfaces. It just becomes, you have to get a developer to do anything. So we want to merge those two worlds. We want to be able to create fragments with React and then have them nestable. And in order to do that, we want to provide better fragment tooling in the form of package imports. So you'll now be able to import NPM packages, front-end packages within a fragment. We'll resolve that for you. We'll bundle that for you. So if you guys are familiar with the NPM bundler and resolving and deduplicating packages, we'll be doing that as well. We want to provide improved front-end tooling. So we've already built a CLI for front-end developers. We want to expand upon that and make that better. And hopefully, with this and the investments we're making here, we want to be more attractive to modern front-end developers and hopefully help you guys work with them as well and advocate for Liferay in your organization. And finally, we want to start talking about style guides. And I don't know if Jorge will be upset at me after this because I pulled this from the recesses of our R&D labs, but style guides is something that we're looking at as an evolution of themes. So as a modern front-end developer, you probably don't enjoy working with themes. It's limiting, it's centralized, and it's very decoupled. And so what we want to start doing is we want to be able to do two things. One is treat styles alongside components. So you'll be able to, more and more, we want to go in the direction where we're recommending you to style components directly alongside, or save the style code directly alongside the component. But for global things, we want to actually provide an interface where you can easily change things like primary colors, font sizes, typography. As we evolve, we see a potential to even accommodate designers and bring them into the product as a tool for them to be able to create these style guides or even design systems. And hopefully through all this, it will provide a better way of theming interface design without having to worry about breaking upgrades when we move to the new Bootstrap internally. And finally, we want to evolve the product by adding innovative capabilities. So again, we've always been fast followers. Historically, Liferay has been really good at making functionality that other people have created, packaging it together, and offering it at a reasonable price. But we want to start really pushing the boundaries and innovating and building features that you can only get from us, only get from Liferay, so that you guys can confidently recommend Liferay to your partners, to your coworkers, to your stakeholders. And one of the coolest ways that we're doing that, and I'm really excited to talk about this, is AI-driven content performance updates. So it's a mouthful, but simply put, you guys might know that we've invested in Liferay Analytics Cloud. Now, when we did that, we weren't intent on making just another Google Analytics. Really, we saw analytics as a good investment for us because we saw the opportunity to take analytics and use it in a way that our competitors aren't doing. A lot of companies provide analytics, but their intended target audience are data analysts, dedicated specialists, marketing ops people. But in order to scale data-driven insights and data-driven action, you need to really empower the day-to-day content authors, the day-to-day employees to use data. And so what we want to do is for something like content, and we want to start with content authoring. For content authoring, we want to take that analytics information, process it through AI and rules, and really show a summary of how your content is performing over time. So a content author can just come in and say, and read that, hey, my content's performing well, or hey, a lot of people are seeing the content, but they're not spending the time to read it. Or hey, maybe it's not even discoverable through SEO. There's not that many impressions. And honestly, it's not that the amount of options there are in content performance and the amount of metrics that a content author cares about, there's not that much. So it's something that we can summarize and provide for them. And now content authors can be more data-driven and be empowered to learn from their efforts. Another thing that we're doing is we're providing performance tips. So when we say, hey, maybe your content, maybe people aren't reading your content, we'll offer some suggestions. So, hey, maybe here are some tips to improve your impressions. Maybe add some keywords so they show up under SEO. Maybe use some different keywords. And so we'll be using the full power of Liferay Analytics Cloud and integration with Google and Google Search Console in order to get this kind of information. We also want to do notification-driven anomaly detection. So a lot of things, one thing that content authors do care about is content performance over time. But it's actually a very tedious thing to keep track of. Because as a content author, you have to keep going back to your data analyst and saying, hey, is my content performing well still? Are people still reading it? And it's really hard to audit all the content you've written and see which ones are still relevant. What we want to do is be able to send notifications when things change. So if there's a sudden uptick in readership, or suddenly your traffic completely stops to some of your content, we'll send notifications. And we'll do that through an authoring dashboard. And through this authoring dashboard, content authors can also keep track of their own performance. So they can see the content that's working well and that's not working well. And we're taking that concept of embedded intelligence, and we want to continue to apply that throughout the product. And so already you'll see glimpses of it also in workflow analytics, but as we move forward, expect to see a lot more of that. But this is the first step for us, is content authoring. And you can expect to see this one starting in 7.3. Another way that we hope to innovate, and it's really a culmination of a lot of long-term efforts, is the idea of being able to display records in pages. Now that sounds simple, but it's like taking the paradigm of structured content and now applying it to data engine. So with data engine, you can create custom records. But really, there's not that much difference between a custom record and custom content structures. And so in the same way you're able to map and display content through templates, we want you to be able to do that with records. That means if you create a new entity called accounts or partners, you can map that to a template. All of a sudden, if you have an internet use case and you need to show your employees, you can create employee pages by mapping employees to templates. In the past, you could technically do this by hacking away at structures, but now we're actually offering out-of-the-box capabilities to do that. In order to expand on this use case, though, we understand, well, as we built this, as we support these use cases, it's also a lot more complex than just showing static content. And so we want to provide more dynamic capabilities to fragments, and so we want to start supporting fragment-to-fragment communication. That also means widget-to-widget communications with portlets. And we have some ideas of how to do that, but to give you a peek, we might be doing things like providing state, a page state. And so we'll provide functionality for your component to be able to save information to a state, and for another component to be able to subscribe to that state change. So if you had a list and you want a filter or a search to work in conjunction with that list, you can do that now. You just create a list component and you create a filter component. You can drag and drop it anywhere on the page, and if a user modifies the filter, the list will change. And finally, we want to be able to map actions to workflows, and that's really the culmination of our efforts. And so it's not just showing content, but it's also providing actionability in the product. And so you can drag and drop a button and map that to a workflow, trigger the workflow, and you're actually starting to do business process. You're starting to solve real use cases without customizing a single thing. Now I want to end it with this. So we want to evolve for the future while respecting the past. I had a lot of conversations with you guys throughout the last 2 days, and I know that we're changing a lot of things. And I've described why we feel that we need to change these things. But at the same time, we understand that you guys have solutions in production, mission-critical solutions, mission-critical projects. And the last thing we want to do is to stop supporting, deprecating your functionality overnight. The devil's in the details, and we want to do the due diligence of making sure that we still support your capabilities, all the old functionality that we've had up until now, while still building for the new. This is something that I personally spend a lot of time worrying about. Well, Jorge spends a lot of time worrying about. Jorge and I might spend 2, 3, 4 hours in a room, and we just list out a bunch of use cases across the whiteboard. And we say, how do we support these use cases without breaking these use cases and without breaking backwards compatibility with these use cases? It's really important to us because we know that you guys rely on us, and we want you guys to keep relying on us. We want you guys to be able to confidently go in and recommend Liferay. Thank you.